You're standing at a motorway service station at 4 in the morning. A lorry driver climbs down from his cab, reaches behind the seat, and pulls out what looks like a tiny baseball bat, or maybe a little steel hammer with a long handle. Then he starts walking down the side of his rig, and he whacks every single tire, one after another. Thunk, 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 all the way down the trailer. And if you've ever seen this, you've probably thought to yourself, what on earth is this man doing? Is he frustrated? Is it some kind of superstition? A nervous habit picked up over 1,000,000 miles on the road? Well, the truth is far more interesting than any of that. And by the end of this video, you will understand why this strange little ritual is genuinely one of the smartest things that driver does all day. Hi, my name is Jeremy, and this is Trucks United. First, let's talk about the tool itself because it has a name. Actually, it has about a dozen names depending on where in the world you are. Some drivers call it a tire thumper. Others call it a tire billy, a tire knocker, a tire bat, or simply a tire checker. In some parts of the world, it's just a tire hammer. Whatever you call it, it's a small handheld club, usually somewhere between 30 and 50 centimeters long, often made of solid steel, hardwood, or a tough composite material. Some of them look like miniature police truncheons. Others look like a cut-down baseball bat, and a fair few drivers just use whatever happens to be lying around: an old hammer, a length of pipe, a sturdy stick. The tool itself is not really the point. What matters is what the driver is listening for when he hits that tire. Because here's the thing, he is not hitting the tire to damage it, or to vent his frustration, or for luck. He is hitting it to listen. That driver is performing a quick, cheap, and surprisingly effective pressure check on every tire on his vehicle. And to understand why he has to do it this way, with a club instead of a gauge, we first need to understand the problem he is actually trying to solve. And that problem is a genuinely strange one. You cannot see a flat truck tire. This sounds ridiculous at first. Of course you can see a flat tire, right? On your car, a flat tire is obvious. The rubber sags, the sidewall bulges out at the bottom, the whole corner of the car sits lower, and you can spot it from across a car park. But a truck tire is a completely different animal, and there are two huge reasons why a flat one can hide in plain sight. The first reason is pressure. A typical car tire runs at somewhere around 30 to 35 pounds per square inch. A heavy truck tire runs at around 100 to 120 pounds per square inch, sometimes even more. That is roughly 3 to 4 times the pressure. And the sidewalls of a truck tire are enormously thick and stiff in order to handle that pressure and the weight it carries. So here's the problem. A truck tire can lose a massive amount of air. We're talking 40, 50, even 60 pounds per square inch, and still look completely normal to the human eye. The sidewall is so rigid that it simply doesn't sag the way a car tire does. A tire that is dangerously, critically underinflated can look absolutely fine from 2 meters away. You could walk right past it and never know. The second reason is even more important, and it's the real heart of this whole thing. Trucks use dual tires. On most heavy goods vehicles, the rear axles don't have just one tire on each end. They have 2 tires mounted right next to each other on the same hub, side by side. These are called duals, or a dual set. And the problem with duals is brutal in its simplicity. If the inner tire of a dual pair goes completely flat, the outer tire is still holding the truck up. The vehicle doesn't lean, it doesn't sag. It drives down the road looking perfectly normal while one of its tires is completely dead. Think about what that means. A driver could have a totally flat tire hidden on the inside of a dual set, tucked away where he can't even see it without crawling under the trailer, and from the cab he would have absolutely no idea. The truck feels fine, it steers fine, it pulls fine, everything seems completely normal, and that is exactly the situation that gets trucks and the people around them into serious trouble. So how do you check? Well, you could use a pressure gauge, and that brings us to the next part of the story. If you want to know the pressure in a tire, you put a gauge on the valve and read the number. Simple, accurate, done. And honestly, a proper gauge reading is the most accurate way to check a single tire. So why don't drivers just do that every time? The answer comes down to one word that rules the entire trucking industry: time. Let's count the tires. A standard articulated lorry, what Americans would call a semi, typically has 18 tires. The tractor unit has steer tires at the front, and usually 2 sets of duals on the drive axles. The trailer has its own axles, each with a set of duals. 18 tires is the classic number, and that's exactly why people call them 18-wheelers. But plenty of configurations have far more. Some rigs running multiple trailers, road trains, and heavy haulage setups can have well over 20, 30, even more tires. Now imagine checking every single one of those with a gauge. For each tire you have to find the valve, which on the inner dual tires is tucked away in an awkward, greasy, hard-to-reach spot. You unscrew the dust cap. You press the gauge on squarely without letting air escape. You read it. You screw the cap back on. And then you do that 18 times, or 22 times, or 30 times. Realistically, that's the better part of 15 or 20 minutes if you're being thorough, and that's before you've even started your engine. A driver doing several pre-trip and en-route checks a day simply cannot spend that long every single time. And here's the kicker. Every time you press a gauge onto a valve, you let a tiny bit of air out. Do that often enough across hundreds of checks, and you're actually contributing to the very problem you're trying to monitor. Now compare all of that to the thumper. A driver can walk the full length of his rig, striking all 18 tires, in well under a minute. He doesn't need to touch a single valve. He doesn't need to crawl underneath. He doesn't need to remove a single dust cap. He just walks and listens. And that, right there, is why the humble tire thumper has survived for the best part of a century, while far fancier technology has come and gone. But this only works if the thump actually tells you something useful. So let's get into the genuinely clever part, the physics. When the driver hits that tire, he's not really interested in how it feels. He's interested in how it sounds, and in some cases, how it bounces the club back at him. And both of those things are governed by the air pressure inside. Think of a tire like a drum. A drum makes it sound because of a skin stretched tight over a frame. When you tighten that skin, the pitch goes up. When you loosen it, the pitch drops and the sound goes dull and floppy. A tire works on exactly the same principle. A properly inflated tire, sitting at 110 pounds per square inch, has an incredibly taut, rigid casing. When you strike it, it rings back with a high, sharp, solid note, a bright, tight thwack that almost stings your hand because the club bounces straight back at you. Now hit a tire that's badly underinflated or flat. The casing is slack. The energy of your strike gets absorbed into the soft, floppy rubber instead of ringing back. The sound is lower, duller, a flat, lifeless thud with no ring to it at all, and the club doesn't bounce, it sort of dies against the rubber. An experienced driver can hear and feel that difference instantly, even with traffic roaring past, even half asleep at 4 in the morning. To them, a flat tire quite literally sounds wrong. There's a lovely bit of physics underneath this. The pitch of that ring is related to the natural resonant frequency of the tire, and that frequency depends on how tightly the casing is tensioned, which depends directly on the pressure inside. Higher pressure, tighter casing, higher pitch. Lower pressure, slacker casing, lower pitch. The driver, without ever thinking about it in those terms, is doing a rough acoustic pressure measurement with nothing but a stick and a trained ear. It's genuinely brilliant when you stop and think about it. But, and this is an important but, the thump test has real limits, and any honest driver will tell you so. The thump is fantastic at catching the catastrophic cases. A completely flat tire, a tire that's lost most of its air, a hidden dead inner dual. Those it catches instantly, and those are the dangerous ones. But the thump cannot reliably tell you the difference between a tire at 95 psi and one at 110 psi. It's a screening tool, not a precision instrument. It answers the question, is this tire catastrophically low, yes or no? It does not answer the question, is this tire at its exact correct pressure? And that distinction actually matters because a tire that's only slightly underinflated, say 10 or 15% low, can still cause real problems over thousands of miles. It wears unevenly, it runs hotter, and it costs you fuel. The thump won't reliably catch that. So the thump is not a replacement for occasionally putting a proper gauge on the tires. It's the fast, daily, every-stop screening that makes sure nothing has gone catastrophically wrong since the last time the driver looked. Think of it like glancing at your dashboard versus taking your car in for a full diagnostic. Both have their place. So now you understand what the driver is doing and why it works. But we still haven't answered the most important question of all. What actually happens if he skips the check? If a flat tire goes unnoticed and he just drives away? And the answer to that is genuinely frightening. Let's go back to that hidden flat inner dual. The truck drives away looking perfectly fine. But underneath, something dangerous is unfolding. Remember, the two tires in a dual pair are designed to share the load equally. If one of them is flat, it isn't carrying its share. So the other tire, the healthy one right next to it, is now carrying double the weight it was ever designed for. It is massively overloaded, and it's flexing far more than it should with every single rotation. That extra flexing generates heat, a lot of heat. And heat is the number one enemy of any tire. As the overloaded tire heats up, the rubber begins to break down. The internal structure, the steel belts and plies that hold the whole thing together, starts to weaken. And eventually, often at motorway speed, that overloaded tire lets go. It doesn't just go flat, it explodes. A truck tire blowout at speed releases an enormous amount of energy, and it can send chunks of rubber and steel flying in every direction. And you've seen the result of this, even if you didn't realize it. Those huge strips and chunks of shredded tire lying on the hard shoulder and in the lanes of every motorway. Drivers call them gators, because a curled up strip of truck tire tread on the road genuinely looks like an alligator lying there. A huge proportion of those gators are the direct result of underinflated or overloaded truck tires overheating and disintegrating. And those chunks aren't just litter. A piece of truck tire tread can weigh several kilograms. It can have steel wires sticking out of it, and when it comes off a tire at speed, or when a car behind hits it, it can cause a very serious accident. Then there's the flat tire itself. A tire that's run flat for any real distance gets extraordinarily hot from all that friction and flexing. Hot enough, in the worst cases, to actually catch fire. Tire fires on trucks are a real and recurring problem, and they can spread to the trailer and its cargo terrifyingly quickly. There are documented cases of entire loads being lost because of a single unnoticed flat tire that overheated and ignited. And finally, there's the simple loss of control. A blowout on a steer tire, the front tires the driver actually steers with, can yank the whole truck violently to one side. Now picture that happening to a 40-ton vehicle in heavy traffic. The stakes could not be higher. So when that driver walks down his rig at 4 in the morning, tapping each tire, he isn't being fussy or superstitious. He is preventing exactly this chain of events from ever getting started. And this isn't just good practice either. It's very often the law. In most countries with a serious trucking industry, drivers are legally required to perform a walk-around inspection of their vehicle before they set off, and tires are right at the top of that checklist. In the United States, the federal regulator requires a pre-trip inspection and a daily vehicle inspection report, and tire condition is a mandatory part of it. In the UK and across Europe, drivers are required to carry out daily walk-around checks, and tires, again, are a key item. Roadside enforcement officers can and do pull trucks over and inspect tire condition, and a flat or badly damaged tire can mean an instant fine, a prohibition order taking the truck off the road, and points against the operator's license. So the thump check isn't just protecting lives, it's protecting the driver's livelihood too. Now, you might be thinking, surely in this day and age we have something better than a man with a stick. And you'd be right, we do. There's some genuinely clever technology out there. Tire pressure monitoring systems, or TPMS, use sensors fitted to each wheel that constantly measure the pressure and beam a reading straight to a display in the cab. Some systems will flash a warning the moment any tire drops below a safe threshold, even while the truck is moving. There are also automatic tire inflation systems, mostly on trailers, that are plumbed into the truck's air supply and actually top up a tire that's slowly losing pressure, keeping it correct without the driver lifting a finger. And fleets increasingly use thermal cameras at depot gates that photograph every tire as the truck rolls past, instantly flagging the hot one that's running flat. So with all of that available, why on earth do we still see drivers walking around with a club? Well, for a few very good reasons. The first is cost. A simple tire thumper costs a few pounds. Fitting a full monitoring system to every wheel across a large fleet costs a great deal more. The second is reliability. The hammer never runs out of battery, never needs a software update, never throws a false alarm, and never breaks down at 4 in the morning in the middle of nowhere. The third is habit and trust. A driver who has walked his rig and thumped his tires before every single trip for 30 years trusts that ritual completely, and trusts his own ears. And honestly, even on a truck fitted with the very latest electronic monitoring, plenty of experienced drivers still grab the thumper and walk the rig anyway, because a sensor can fail silently, but a flat tire always sounds flat. Belt and braces, as they say. So there it is, that strange little ritual you've seen at service stations, the driver wandering down his rig, whacking each tire with a club, turns out to be one of the oldest, cheapest, and cleverest safety checks in the entire transport industry. He's not angry, he's not superstitious, he's listening to the sound of his tires, using nothing more than a stick and a trained ear to catch a hidden flat that he could never see, on a dual set he can't even reach, before it overheats, blows out, and turns into a genuine disaster at motorway speed. It's a low-tech solution to a high-stakes problem, and the fact that it has survived a century of technological progress tells you just how well it actually works. And that's the thing about trucking, isn't it? Once you start pulling on the thread and asking why drivers do the odd little things they do, you almost always find there's a brilliant, hard-earned piece of logic hiding underneath. Nothing about a working truck is an accident. Every habit, every tool, every ritual exists because at some point, somewhere, somebody learned the hard way that it mattered. So next time you're at a service station and you see a driver tapping his way down the side of his rig, give him a nod. He's not being odd. He's doing one of the most important jobs of his entire day in under a minute with a little stick. What did you think this was before you watched this video? Did you assume it was just superstition, or did you already know the secret? Let me know down in the comments. And if you've ever driven a truck yourself, tell me, are you team thumper or team pressure gauge? I genuinely want to know. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Trucks United for a whole lot more, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.